All right, and we are live. It's April 13th, Purple Politics. Got some good things. Day after Easter today.
Yes,
So
sir.
see how we can get things kicking off.
Yeah. So first topic today is the USPS. I don't know if you've heard much about it, LJ, about what's going on with the USPS currently.
Because we're not going to fund it, right?
So the Trump administration threatened to veto Congress' recent $2.2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package if it included bailout to the USPS. So it was originally supposed to include a $13 billion grant that the USPS wouldn't have to pay back. But it looks like they had to settle for a $10 billion loan that made it into the final version of the bill that was signed into law. But yet they're still waiting on the Treasury Department's approval for the $10 billion loan. So I don't know how that works, but yeah, so it's interesting to see. So what I did is I did a little bit of writing in the back to talk more about the policy side of it and try to move as much politics. So USPS first class mail is a bulk of their revenue for the USPS. In 2001, it was at the peak was 104 billion 104 billion mail that was going out, and now we're down for $104 billion in revenue. And right now in 2019, first class mail produces $55 billion. USPS in 2019 made $71 billion in revenue. But even though their revenue got cut essentially by half in these past 2 decades, the cost of running USPS has not gone down. One of the major things that lead to their cost is rural areas. So rural areas, they don't get a chance. If you wanted to send something to a rural area through USPS versus FedEx, it would maybe cost you 10, 15 times more. FedEx and UPS will not service rural areas for just general mail because it's not profitable enough.
Okay.
So the USPS covers, whether shipping prescription drugs or getting important mail that comes from the IRS or the DMV. These rural areas do need these services. So
Sure.
I am actually surprised that the GOP, a lot of their voters, if people who live in rural areas are more likely to vote red for the GOP.
Mhm.
So I'm surprised that in a scenario, let's say where you had to do in-mail voting,
Yeah.
it would benefit them to, have this type of service. And overall, USPS, it's probably the largest union currently in the United States with over 600,000 employees.
Right.
And, it does a lot for the country beyond just delivering a piece of mail. I think there's a lot of mail that is essential. Again, DMV prescriptions.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this?
On the surface level, it looks like something that it's like it's a necessity for our country to have, right? Like
Right.
we want to be able to keep open those streams of communication. I think we're going to need to rely on them probably even more than ever,
Right.
unless we can start doing a few more things online.
Right.
It does seem like it's one of those organizations that it is in a dying industry, but
Right.
it's still something that like is of a necessity.
Right.
So is it one of those things that like is this one of those negotiation tactics by Trump to try to get them to like start streamlining things? Like, is there a way to make USPS like a little bit slimmer and leaner and work better? Or is this one of those things where, look, it's a one guy or two guys in a truck just driving around in rural areas. They need to get paid the appropriate dollar amount, and their wages are the wages that are the reason that this is an expensive subsidy by the government?
Yeah.
Or is it potentially a bloated thing where there's fat cats at the top of it that are getting money that we could maybe thin out. Like, what I wonder what percentages of the amount of money that it takes to support this are going directly to what I hope are those two people in a truck driving out into rural areas to make sure that we don't lose connection.
So the USPS CEO's salary was $286,000.
Okay.
So it's
That's a competitive salary. Like, I don't look at that as saying, wow, that's so much money.
I mean, for managing $71 billion in revenue. Yeah. I mean, I think
I would actually say it's low.
Yeah.
It's lower than I thought it would be.
Yeah, me too. And so I don't see, if the CEO is making $286,000, I don't see this as like there is a fat cat at the top. That's, and if there was, I think that I feel like both sides have said, okay, we got to reduce this. This is not Amazon.
Mhm.
And from my perspective, I think that Trump has, this is my take on it. Trump has a vendetta against Jeff Bezos for a few reasons, right? The biggest reason being the Washington Post, which actually has a spine and holds Trump accountable, versus Facebook, where Mark Zuckerberg doesn't really have a spine. He acts like he has a spine. But when push comes to shove, he will put his business over his ideals that he talks about. I have nothing against Zuckerberg siding with Trump. That's totally fine. There's a lot of CEOs who side with Trump.
Yeah.
But don't talk one way and then walk another way, which is what Zuckerberg has been doing. And
well, I mean, Washington Post does do that when it comes to the fact that Bezos owns it, and they do speak liberally.
yes.
And he is the most ridiculous guy out here right now.
But the Washington Post is not like, you can find.
He seems to let it run as it always has run.
Yeah,
right?
because
he doesn't seem to really be jumping in their business.
Yeah, I mean, the Washington Post is made up of journalists that have integrity. So if there's a time to criticize Jeff Bezos, they have countless times on the Washington Post, and they also
do criticize him.
They do criticize Jeff Bezos. They criticize Amazon,
nice.
And then they also criticize Trump. And the thing that I think, from my perspective, is that Trump hates the fact that Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world,
sure.
who actually gets to use a USPS in a way to grow his business.
Well, so you do see some of like the Republicans talking about like, we're getting the raw end of the deal to Amazon in this, which we might be, right?
I think we are. So
like Amazon again is like abusing our system to be able to create a benefit for this guy.
Yeah. So I agree. But here's my criticism, though, is that if you really have something against the guys giving the big guys like Jeff Bezos giving us the raw end of the deal, why are we cutting the tax rates for the top 1% of 1%? Then tax them appropriately. Right. So like, it's like, if that is the actual worry, versus what I feel like, what I don't like is that Trump is against a single CEO versus him being against CEOs that are give us the raw end of the deal. Walmart's giving us the raw end of the deal.
But he's more than a single CEO, though. He's the richest guy. So
right.
So I think
the question though is like, why is Trump going against Bezos?
Well, this is the whole thing though.
Is it personal or is it
Trump's
policy?
going against USPS right now?
Right.
And I actually think
because of Bezos.
I think he should fight actually Bezos straight up. I have no problem with him giving specific crap to our deal with Amazon. I'm saying like, if Trump wants to negotiate on behalf of USPS to make sure that Amazon's paying their fair share into this, I think that's really appropriate. And I actually would hope that he would do that.
Right.
But if I don't want him to defund USPS because Amazon is draining the system. Right.
Yeah. And that's why I think I look at it as an abuse of government if we're using Trump is fighting against Jeff Bezos for the reason that he doesn't like the way that Washington Post writes against him. So then he finds an indirect way of punishing USPS.
But us as taxpayers should want Trump to be aggressive with negotiation with Bezos in this particular instance, though.
Right. So that includes then raising. So then if the playground is USPS in this situation, then do we raise the prices for private businesses? Do we say, hey, as an individual citizen, your cost stays the same. But if you are a private business, your cost maybe goes up by 40% because we got to close the gap. That makes sense to me. Like
Mhm.
in a way to do it. Because in a way, how do we ensure that a grandma that lives in a rural area has the ability to vote by mail? She has the ability to get her DMV papers and all that stuff, and is not paying FedEx prices because that might price her, her out of a situation. Be like, look, I live on Social Security. I cannot afford
Yeah.
every week to pay, $30 to get this thing when it usually costs me $4.
Well, this is just one of those instances where I think this gives Democrats actually a little bit of leverage in a kind of a bullet in the gun, let's call it, against why it's so inappropriate that Amazon would pay $0 in federal taxes. Because this would be one of those, I'm guessing our federal taxes go directly to USPS. This is a great instance to show how sometimes there is a Goliath in the room that is putting weight on the system and they're not even contributing to it.
And that's why I think that in order to ensure that Amazon doesn't give us the raw end of the deal, it's actually by taxing Amazon correctly. It's not about punishing USPS, which provides USPS does welfare checks on people, right? That there's people who so there's a lot of things that the USPS provides in order to ensure there's a civil society that can flourish and essentials are getting to where they need to get to.
That's where but I think this is a great space to actually create a better type of taxation on companies that are huge abusers of specific types of infrastructure, where it's like, okay, so now we have this like shared economy where you buy stuff and you just ship it.
100%.
It's like, and Amazon can be all over the world buying and shipping or selling and shipping things. And yeah, maybe they shouldn't get taxed for some specific things that they fight so heavily against when it comes to, I don't know what they're fighting against the taxes, right? They want lower taxes. They're like, well, we're an e-business. Right. But it's like, well, in this business, you're actually a shipping business. And you are, so it's like, if they're getting taxed federally, this is specifically where that money should actually go. Right. And it would make sense if like, now that we're talking about different like taxation, this is how we can start to figure out how like these e-commerce companies should get taxed appropriately.
Yeah.
And where those funds, I like it like if I'm going to get taxed as a business, I would like my taxes to go specifically to the area that I am contributing to.
So they're like customized taxation. So you're saying like Walmart, for example, should be paying more for the roads because they have a lot of trucks that are roading the roads when they ship across the country.
And that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely see that. I think customized taxation.
It gets messy. I guess I'm more of a flat tax person now that we're like kind of talking about all of this.
Yeah.
But in the instance that we do have a crazy system and it's complicated and all over the place, I would like to see that.
The government has bills to pay. And, at times I feel like the Republicans are trying to do everything they can to essentially kill the government, which I'm like, it does not make sense to me because the government, again, in a civil society has bills. We got to buy masks. We got to fix roads. We got to pay for schools. We have military. We have firefighters. Like we have a lot of things that we need to cover as a country that make it simple and easy enough for us to focus on things that matter to us, family, friends, work, because we have these services.
Well, I get that, but that doesn't mean that things aren't negotiable though.
No, of course.
And like, so sometimes I think some of these like governmental contracts that we get into, like one of the interesting things to read about with USPS is they had to like already pay like 75% of their pension.
Yeah.
Like, so 75 of the current workers, they've already had to like prepay for their pension.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, it's a safety measure, right? But
yeah, I mean, the Republicans want to see the USPS privatized, which if that is the case, I mean, I think there's a lot of negatives with that because we need one that's actually public and is affordable to the average American. And it should be a service similar to how universal healthcare is could be a service to a lot of Americans. So it provides a baseline for a functioning government. We need to have a baseline.
I get that, but as far as the specific pension thing goes, it's a heavy burden to hold, right? That
Why is that?
Well, because so what I believe, I don't know all about it, but what from my kind of brief overview of it is like, okay, I'm working at USPS.
Right.
They actually already have my pension sitting around waiting for me in my retirement.
They might, yeah, they probably have to prepay some or majority of it.
And if I'm just like the age that I am right now, like in my early 30s, I just think it's a little early to have that money just like sitting around doing nothing.
Well, yeah, and that's what's proposed by the GOP, and I think a part of that is to cash strap the USPS because like
the 75% pension being paid down already is what the GOP wants to happen.
Well, I know, I think that already happened, and so like from what I've read is that the USPS was actually profitable up until the 2008 recession.
Okay,
and then from there, new laws were passed, and there's some of it that was good. For example, the banks were required to have more money in the reserves. And for that reason, we can actually weather this relatively better than we did in 2008. And, the Federal Reserve is saying, go ahead and like use up some of that money. And so it's a give or take situation. I think what it comes down to is that I agree. Look, it doesn't make sense to me that the revenue for USPS has gone down by 50%, but the expenses stay the same. Now, the expenses, as I've mentioned, is things that don't make money that FedEx and UPS will not deliver to, including, mostly rural areas.
And that's the expenses, or that's the revenue that we have on the board right now.
Yeah. Well, that's for first class mail. In 2019, in total, was $71 billion.
That's revenue or expenses?
That's revenue.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so looking at this, I think that if we are going to, the USPS provides, different needs and allows a civil society to function. If it does go private, I think you're going to see people in rural areas lose some of those benefits. So my only point with this is that I'm surprised that rural areas are not against or fighting for more.
Sure.
For this more.
I'm kind of more of like a USPS supporter in this, but I guess playing devil's advocate a little bit. Not that I'm also, but I am supportive of, I think we should be just tougher negotiators and make sure that we streamline things as much as possible. What's the negative of maybe more of our mail going viral, digital? Like, I think that's also one of those things that like I could see a lot of people like getting support of, like, okay, you know what? Maybe it's time to start discussing that the whole system is outdated and it's the cost is a burden.
Yeah.
Could we do this in a better way?
So one thing that does cause a burden is junk mail. So from my understanding is that 50% of our mail is actually junk mail. And that actually takes more away from than gives into the system.
That makes sense. Okay.
If we got rid of junk mail, which I think everybody would be very happy with, it'd be a green thing. We could reduce our cost.
And 50% of the cost of USPS would be cut.
No, it's not. I don't think it's 50%, but it could probably be a significant amount. I would have to look into it. But I could see it would go down probably by like 20%. Which would still be
that's an interesting, like, easy policy for everybody to support.
Yeah,
that you were able to uncover during this little
and so just get rid of junk mail and or junk mail pays more, and so that's where we either got to get rid of things.
No, we should get rid of junk mail because it's wrecking the planet though too.
It's true.
So it's like there's just too much paper. If we actually could pile up how much paper junk mail was,
right,
we would all throw up.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So. Okay.
Yeah. So let's get rid of junk mail. That's where we can meet in the middle and do a purple policy.
Yeah, because when's the last time you checked our mail?
I throw away more because I would say that 80% of our mail is junk mail.
Because we don't check our mail enough because it's Corona season, and we're trying to be careful. But there's so much junk mail when I check it that I'm always scared I'm gonna miss my essential stuff.
Yeah.
Because we have like one of those rooms where you can like throw out all your mail.
Yeah.
I
that's what
kind of
do.
like to just bring it up here because then I know that I didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
But
it sucks.
It's scary how many different discount things that you're looking at. And you're like, I've never once been influenced by that mail coming.
Well, I wouldn't look at it, and I think it is. So I think this is one we should follow up with and maybe put together as a policy.
And how much, because of all the junk mail, I wonder how much junk mail contributed to the spread of coronavirus.
Probably 100% of the coronavirus is from junk mail.
A lot of coronavirus came online probably through the mail system.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Actually. I'm surprised we haven't seen Trump blame the mail system on the coronavirus during this debate. It just shows he's not.
Don't give him any ideas.
That's witty, though. If he was like, I actually blame the mail system, and that's why we shouldn't have it.
Don't give them any ideas. I swear, he's if he watches this,
that's a pretty smart idea.
Don't tweet at him. Okay, next topic. Sanders endorses Biden. What do you think about that?
Well, so I watched Biden's live today.
Okay.
And it was really funny because he was sitting there and he's like, oh, we're going to bring Bernie Sanders in to talk. And he's like, I'm bringing in my friend. And then Bernie endorses him. And Biden had to act like he didn't know it was coming. He did a whole no way, and just kind of dropped his head. And he's like, I'm just so happy you did that, and you endorsed me. And then he also kind of says this thing. He's like, well, I guess, now that you endorse me, that kind of makes me the candidate. And it's like, well, yeah, bro, you already knew this and this is staged, but does it matter? That Bernie endorses him?
It does matter. It actually matters more that Bernie, in my opinion, right? He endorses Biden even more than Obama endorsing Biden. I think a lot of Bernie supporters are pissed because we see him as once in a lifetime candidate.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sad because the next time we have the potential to see somebody like Bernie is 40 years from now. Meaning you need to be consistent on the right side of history and caring and not be somebody who can get bought out and not have taken a single dollar from any private group.
Well, AOC could be the hope of the Bernie Sanders.
I know, but I'm saying that it's going to take a few decades to prove that out, right? It's like I've seen Lindsey Graham jump sides, almost breaking ankles every time. So to have somebody who will be in politics for this long and can stick to one side.
Because pretty much every politician has actually bounced around on different sides.
Even Obama has, you know what I mean? So I think it is that rare. And so for us to see a candidate like that in a while, another candidate that was like that was Ron Paul. Ron Paul was as close to as a libertarian as you could have. He was a doctor. And I thought, from somebody who was on the opposite side of the spectrum from him and he was somebody I looked at and I was like, you know what? I like your consistency. And
he's a gynecologist though, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trusting that's crazy. I did always like Ron Paul because I'm pretty sure he was a flat taxer.
Yeah.
But he did have a little bit too much crazy in him. He had that libertarian vibe, which there's always just something. I love the libertarians. I think it sounds like such a fun idea. And Ron Paul was. I mean, you just can't support a creep just the whole gynecologist thing throws it totally off for me. But seemed like a nice guy.
So we'll see how much. We'll see. Time will tell how much the endorsement made a difference.
It's hard to see Bernie Bernie's supporting him and endorsing him. But you can also see it in his eyes. He's like, oh my, I can't believe I have to do this.
Yeah. I mean, in his statement, he basically says that we have to endorse Biden because Trump is the most dangerous president that we've ever had. And we got to get rid of him. So again, he's not writing this as Biden is going to be great for this, X, Y, Z. he's stating his reason is the anti-Trump.
Yeah.
It's an anti-Trump endorsement than it is a bot for Biden. And that's just the pill that a lot of Democrats, especially who are in the far left, will have to swallow.
Yeah. And his supporters are obviously going to follow Biden. They're all going to go towards Biden. The problem is it's not the vote that matters when it comes to the Bernie Sanders supporter. I don't think, because like we've kind of seen the size of the Bernie Sanders supporter a little bit smaller than their voice. They're such great activators. They're so darn loud. They're so they speak articulately. They speak with reason and science and all this stuff, and they're really good at backing their points. Even though you don't agree with them, they come at you with like some really hard data. The only problem is the vote doesn't matter to the Biden. To me, it's the enthusiasm, and we'll see if that enthusiasm can keep up during this Biden run. And the anti-Trump enthusiasm obviously can stay hot.
Yeah.
But having to pass the ball to Biden of how you are anti-Trump, that's where it gets a little bit dicey.
Yeah, it's 2020 is going to be a wild year because either way, that the November elections is going to be crazy. There will be a lot of people voting. There is going to be controversy. There's no way that there's not going to be controversy, And I think that if my prediction is that if Trump loses, he's going to try to figure out a way to not accept that, which is going to be interesting to see, because when Hillary lost, she's like, I lost, and Trump won. He is the new president. We'll see if Trump has that level of grace, which I don't think he does from everything else I've seen. So we'll
that'd
see.
Be fun to watch, to see like how he would fight it to the bitter end.
Yeah,
they would have to pull him out kicking and screaming.
Yeah,
which you would do it. You just pull him out.
Yeah, you'd have to, or else then the country collapses if he loses and says he's not going to leave, and if he stays, because then people are like, what? I'm not stopping at the red light. Like, why would I listen to anything? Okay, yeah. Dr. Fauci, what is the probability that you think he gets fired?
I think it's 0.
Okay,
because I actually think he is. For Trump, I think he's a really good tool. I think Fauci is great for the country and also great for Trump.
All right.
One, I think he's great for the country because he seems like a really sound mind individual. He's able to articulate, look, when I'm speaking about science, and I'm speaking about the facts and figures when it comes to the science. If you want to ask me about all the other things, I'm going to just kind of throw the softball thing at you, which is, sorry, that's not my choice.
Yeah.
Which people don't like that, but it's like, he's like, look, the quicker that you shut down and stall, you're going to have less deaths. The longer that you shut down and stall, you're going to have less deaths. But there's also other decisions that need to be made that are outside of my control. And that doesn't even mean that I don't think that you should make those decisions. He's just saying, as a scientist, this is what I have to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I think he does his part pretty well. And I actually agree with you. I would say that I don't know if it's 0, but it's close to 0. If Trump asks the people around him if he should fire Fauci, I think they're all going to say no. And it's actually, it would be like shooting himself in the face. So
it would be a weird call right now because Fauci is not throwing him under the bus.
Yeah, he's actually doing everything he can to.
Trump's recent retweet would lead you to believe that he's throwing Fauci under the bus, or he's supporting people that are throwing Fauci under the bus. It's a weird move. It's a little cryptic, which we were even debating about before talking on this. It was like, what is Trump really trying to say here? It's not fully clear. You can definitely lean towards what you were saying. He's throwing him totally under the bus.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he knows that it would be not in his best interest I think personally feels a certain type of way about him, but at the same time realizes, as you said, the importance for the country, but also the importance for him. And if Fauci was throwing him under the bus, I could see why Trump would want to do that. But in this point, I'd be like, why? Like, why would you cause more angst for yourself throwing this guy out when he's going on CNN and defending, the fact that he's like, well, you can't compare us to South Korea. And so we didn't respond like South Korea. I think
that was his team of 4 that are addressing everybody on a daily basis. It's a pretty good team, at least to add more credibility around. At least you feel like there's sound minds in the room.
Yeah.
Because they are willing to even disagree with some of what Trump's saying right after he talks.
Right.
Which is kind of nice to see. I think even Trump supporters appreciate that. I think everybody, it gives him a space to work within. It makes everybody feel like at least there's other supporters in the room. Like one of the things that he said 2 days ago, which is he's sitting there, must have been Friday, actually. So he's sitting there live and they're like, so how are you going to make the decision of whether or not to shut down the country? And he's like, I just figured out that this is the biggest decision that I'm going to have in my presidency, which was just like, wait, you just figured this out? But he's like, I came to the conclusion last night. This is the biggest decision. And then she's like, well, so how are you going to make the decision? Like, what are you going to use for calculation? He goes, this. He's like, I'm just going to make a decision. And he's like, it's going to be the biggest decision I've ever made. He's like, because at some point, he's like, I'm going to listen to 35 people and all 35 people are going to have an opinion. And he's like, I just got to kind of listen to those 35 people and make a choice. And he's kind of correct on that. It's also a little scary to hear Trump go, I'm just going to make a decision, but that's how decisions are. You're like,
well, yeah. That's why it's important to whoever you're picking at the top, because that's how every decision is made. You have advisors, which you listen to them. And she
wasn't really happy with that answer, but it was like, that's how it works.
Well, yeah, he's the final yes or no.
Yeah, he gauges his thoughts. He hears everybody out. We're all kind of debating whether or not he listens to anybody. But then he makes the choice, and he's like, I'm just going to make the choice one day, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. This is an interesting case study. History. It'll be interesting to see how history judges this time versus how we're judging ourselves. So,
because if he only cuts Fauci and just puts more Pence in our face, horrible move.
Yeah,
I actually like that he's kind of pushed Pence to the background a little bit on this. He's really brought in the Surgeon General. The lady who's been just helping with all the specific details on rollout, and then Fauci. I mean, it's actually a pretty reasonable team so far. We'll see if they make a reasonable choice though, and then we'll actually be able to debate further on how that open up happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. Surfer shooting.
Okay, we got just a little bit of time here left. Small amount.
So there's something that we saw, actually LJ found, that was not getting a lot of love in the news and we thought was just crazy. So do you want to kind of give him a little background on this video?
Well, this is a bizarre video that I just found this morning. And I do follow a lot of people that are like conspiracy theory people. And so every once in a while, I'll show Kamal a video and then we'll figure out 2 seconds later that it was like totally fake. So this video, it could be found on Snopes in like 3 days as being like completely falsified. But in my quick little check, I didn't get any falsified stuff. It was put up on a USA Today blog as it was like their For the Win blog, which after you watch this, you'll think it's a little weird. It was on a For the Win blog.
Yeah.
But and then Surfer Magazine did an interview with a person confirming this.
Yeah.
So watch this.
That is wild. What the
So, I mean, you're seeing that correctly. This is bizarre. You see this cop here.
He's saving a life by taking a life.
Running after the surfer. And then one of the funny things that you'll see in like the comment section is people talking about, well, one, it was potentially blanks in the gun.
Yeah, but he caused PTSD.
Or he was just trying to scare the guy. And then some of the people go, well, he wasn't even shooting at him. And it's like, look at where I paused this.
I mean, he's going
He
for
is shooting him at him as much as you could possibly try to shoot at him. Like,
yeah. So, I mean, he's running. He ran out of breath.
he's trying to get him.
Yeah.
And so if
And he's not even going for the legs. He's going for the head.
So both of those cases don't really make any sense to me because one, he was trying to shoot at him. And if it was blanks, why would you point the gun?
Yeah.
You would just like, oh, I have blanks in my gun. I'm just gonna like
Shoot in the air.
shoot the gun.
Yeah, that cop should definitely be arrested. I mean, I don't care if it's a blank or not. If you scare somebody like that, you're causing damage either way.
Yeah, and another surfer that day on the beach got arrested. This was down in Costa Rica, so this was not totally on our soil here. But still really surprised that was just something that I haven't seen at all.
Yeah.
It only had like 26 likes.
It's crazy.
Not much coverage, but was covered by a few different things that mattered. So I don't know.
That's wild.
All right, but so that's it for the day. So if you got any comments, if you hate it or you love it, give us a comment, shout it out, and we will talk to you later. Godspeed.
We'll see you tomorrow. Woo!
Live in.